Hello, and welcome to episode 13. So, yes, I checked which episode we're on this time around. Right, time to keep going. Okay, we do not need that. There we go. Don't know why the zoom does that. Unless the Z does something else. Ah, speed strafe. Okay, that explains it. Maybe that's the thing I should have looked up previously. So, yes, it's still the same day. It's been about 10 minutes since I finished the last episode. I'm going to have some editing to do tonight. So, on the previous episode, I did start a sort of rant about previous employers. So, I'm in my 40s. I don't tend to change jobs regularly. I do tend to be quite good at sticking with jobs. So, I've worked in a pub, bar work, which I absolutely hate. Hate with a passion. I'll never do bar work again if I can help it. Don't like waitressing. It's just not for me. And occasionally, with my current job, they need us to serve, when there's functions and stuff with parents and teachers. And I've pretty much said I'll hand my notice in before I do that. Because if I want to be a waitress, I'll apply to be a waitress. And they understand. So I do other things when it comes to doing overtime. But that's by the by. So I think, I do like my current job because they are reasonable. They don't expect you to go above and beyond for minimum wage. They understand that they get what they pay for. And as long as we're doing the job that we're paid for to do, they don't expect more. Occasionally things come up, where they need people to do overtime. So they must have had lava and water. Just, yeah. A couple waterfall. Yeah, so advice going forward. Now I know it's not always going to be possible depending on where you're working and what the job is, but know your worth. And remember, you get what you pay for. So if you're getting paid minimum wage, then you shouldn't be pulling out all the stops and doing ridiculous amounts of work to make the company happy, because they're not treating you any better. One of the things you'll find is if you go above and beyond, you don't get thought any better of. It just becomes the norm. The expectation is that you'll always do it. And this is something I found in previous employers. So before my current job, I was working retail. So I was working for a UK company. So any people watching this who are in the UK will be familiar with the company called Argos. So I started there doing as a customer advisor, and this was back before mismanagement took over. And so we'd have people who would work the jewellery counter, or people who would do just particular areas, and we were fairly well staffed. So I worked really hard to get on the jewellery counter, and I was good at it. I was good at selling the jewellery because I have an interest in that sort of area. I could adjust 90% of watches that came in if they needed the watch straps adjusted. And then eventually the business decided that they weren't going to have that manned all the time. And they wanted people to be more flexible, to be able to do more areas. Basically, everyone was supposed to be brilliant at everything. So we got moved around into different areas, and a lot of focus got put on selling extra. So insurance, we weren't allowed to use the word insurance because technically it wasn't insurance, but I don't work for them anymore, so hell with that. Insurance, basically, if you're buying a watch, take out this extra protection, so if it gets broken, if you leave it in your pocket and goes to the washing machine, you can come back and claim on the protection you've taken out and get a replacement or an exchange of equal value. And it was only like for one exchange, but it was sort of peace of mind that it was normally like a one-off payment. So we'd make the offer, but for some things I understood it really wasn't much point, or it was ridiculously expensive, and the amount of pressure that was put on you to make these offers and make these sales. It was a case of, unless the whole store hits this, we will get a bonus. Well, regular staff such as myself wouldn't get a bonus. The management still, they got their bonus. Which I found out several years later that their management was still getting bonuses, which annoyed me ever so slightly. And, it was a case of, the more you did, the more the expectation. They'd have these reward programs where you could get vouchers and stuff if you went above and beyond. It was a case of, well, what's above and beyond? It's a case of, you're paying us the minimum. What more do you want from us, sort of thing? It's a case of, what's your interpretation of above and beyond? And as time came on, you began to realise that they were taking the mick. It was a case of, it was something that wasn't really worthwhile. You weren't getting anything out of it, but it was a way of trying to get you to do more. Oh, sorry. My heart stopped for a second then because I thought there was a hole in the ice. Oh dear. So I managed to move myself around and ended up changing stores, and they were putting like pressure on me to do better, and they had me on like a training program. Because they weren't doing their side of the training program for me to improve, they couldn't take it down a disciplinary route, because if you kept being poor at something, they could actually start a disciplinary process against you, but they have to show that they've made steps to help you improve, and you're just not improving. And I was quite happy to do whatever needed to try and improve, even though I didn't really care, because there have been times when I had worked really hard at it, and I'd hear other members of staff being recognised for like doing so well and doing this and this, and I'd be there in case of, hang on a minute, I've done this and this. Oh, we didn't realise, we didn't notice your name on the list. It was, you sort of were getting ignored. So I stopped trying on that, thinking, you know what, I don't believe in this product, and the way you're sort of rewarding people, it's the same people who are getting rewarded all the time. And that's so, yeah, I'll say what needs to be said, but I'm not going any further with it. I'm not going to push it. And of course, because they weren't doing the training with me, they couldn't do any disciplinary over it. So in the end, they moved me into the stockroom, which is where I wanted to be. So in the stockroom, you would bring in deliveries, you would get the items. Ooh, oh, it's an ender chest. No comment. Yeah, so the way Argos worked is, better explain it to non-Brits. So most of you used to, you go into a shop, stuff are on the shelves, you pick up the stuff on the shelves, you go and pay for it. With Argos, you didn't. You go into the shop, there would be a catalogue, and in the future we had touchscreen computers. You would browse through the catalogue or the computer to find the product, and there'd be a way of checking to see if it was in stock. You'd go and pay for it, and someone would go into the back stock room and get the item and bring it out to you. So you never physically got your hands on the item until after you paid for it. I know it seems about a crazy concept, but it does work, as long as we keep good records of what's in stock, and for the most part we're pretty good at that. So working in the stock room in Argos wasn't just simply a little thing, it was, you're there all the time, you're the runners getting the items for the customers who have paid for them and get it down to them as quickly as possible, because the idea was they would have their item within X amount of time after paying. So I got myself moved to the stockroom where I wanted to be, and I slowly took over from the current stockroom manager, because they were having a bit of a management reshuffle. And he wasn't particularly interested in the stockroom anyway. So I was able to take over and start running it myself. And I was doing good. I was doing a good job. I was dealing with the issues, dealing with things that had to go back, dealing with the distribution centres when they started being silly and sending ridiculous amounts of stuff that we didn't have room for, literally getting in touch with them saying do it again, we're sending everything back. Making sure we were keeping up to date with any stock rotation that had to be done, health and safety, compliant training people. And I worked really hard to get to that point. And I even started on taking on additional responsibilities that wasn't really meant for me. Sort of sorting out cashing up the tills, inputting payroll. So the managers could come in later. So I'd come in the morning when the store would open, or before the store would open for deliveries and stuff. And then I would finish by lunchtime. The management can come in later. And then they started to force me and another one out the front more. It'll be a case of, we got no staff, so there's two of you in, so one you'll have to be at the front, and the other one, would have to be in the stock room. Delivery should be in by then. It's like a case of, not if it runs late, which it often did. And the amount of thousands of items were coming in every day, so you had to be able to put it away. And it was, the argument was, if you thought it's late, we'll just put more people on. It's like, well, you've got no one to put it on anyway, so we're going to be working longer hours as a result. And it'd be a case of, you've just finished your shift, someone's phoning sick, can you stay? Because otherwise we'll have no one to cover breaks. So, being daft, I would often end up staying later. Before now, I'd done multiple double shifts, where I'd be there from the opening till close. And that because it'd be like, it's going to struggle for everybody else and all the rest of it. And I can't remember what time it was when we started. Shall we say we've been going for 10 minutes? We've only done 3,000 blocks, so we'll see how long it takes us to do another 3,000, and that'll give us an idea of how long we've been going for. So, I'd be like, alright, I'll stay. And then the next thing, it would be a case of, I'm having to leave early. It'd be a manager would be like, I'm having to leave early because of this, and this. It'd be like, well, we're short-staffed, how are we going to do breaks? And the answer was always, you'll just have to manage. And that used to absolutely infuriate me, because I would be made to feel guilty if I said no, that I couldn't stay extra. And I'd end up doing it not to help the management, because I would want to help my team. But then they would pull that on me, and it was like, no, I don't care about you guys. Sort of thing. I'm off. At one point when I first transferred between stores, I had been a team leader in the previous store, but I made it very clear I didn't want that again. But because I was the only one who had the experience of doing it, I was often being put in management situations where I would be left running the store. And it would normally be the end of the day, so like we'd close at 6, so there'd be at least a manager until 5, and you'd have the last hour, which wasn't that bad because it wasn't that busy. But they would pull it so I was always doing like the Thursday, Friday, Saturday late. And they were the busiest ones. There'd be special sales go on the run up to Christmas. There used to be this thing called 3 for 2 on toys. So 3 times on the run up to Christmas. The last one would normally be end of October, beginning of November. For over a weekend, they'd run a special offer where if you bought 3 toys, you got the cheapest one free. Now, you weren't supposed to buy the system to make it, people save as much money as possible. It was supposed to put everything through, and whatever, if somebody was buying 9 toys, and the cheapest 3 out of those 9 would be the free ones. But people realised if they did it individually, as individual transactions, like 3 most expensive together, 3 middle ones together, and the 3 cheapest ones together, you'd have better savings. So, and occasionally, that wouldn't work. You'd have to override prices for customers, sort of thing. So it made a lot of work. And I remember one time, it was the last of the 3 for 2s before Christmas, so it was the busiest one. 2 managers were booked off. One was going away. Another one had booked the day off for another reason. So it was just me and one other manager. It was a Saturday, and I was on mainly with new employees once we'd been taken on for Christmas. And the manager was on with me. He was supposed to be there till 5 o'clock. And that comes up to me and says, "Oh, I've got to go at 2 o'clock, and that's so I'll be leaving you at 2. And this was probably the first time I gave them an ultimatum. And I literally said to him, "If you walk out that door at 2 o'clock, I'm locking the store up and I'm phoning the area manager and telling him why. Because if you're supposed to be here at 5, you are not leaving me from 2 o'clock till 6. On a Saturday, which is just after payday, on the last 3 for 2, when it's going to be absolutely horrendous. That ain't happening." As you can tell by my voice, even now, years later, I'm still fuming that they tried to pull that on me. And so he did. He ended up having to stay. I think he left about 4:30 in the end as a compromise, because there was no way on earth I was letting him leave before that. So when I started my current employer, I made it very clear that I wasn't going to put up with that sort of nonsense again. If I can't get into work, I can't get into work. It's tough. If they need somebody to cover something and that's something I don't want to do, too bad. And fair play, they completely get it. You know, they understand, and they don't force anybody to do beyond what they want to or what they're able to, as long as you're doing the job you've actually been employed for. So one of the things I'd say to people is try not to get taken advantage of, because you want to try and help, you want to be a team player, you want to help your colleagues, sort of thing. But the more you give, quite often the more that will get taken from you. And it's a sad state of affairs that it's that way, but unfortunately you'll find it that way quite regular. Was it no good deed goes unpunished? And the reward for working hard is more work. And so there's my rant about employers. So yeah, it's reasonable to expect you to do the job you've been employed to do. But when they start taking advantage of that and treating you with that respect, then they lose your respect. There's other instances, and then back, when I was in retail, that still to this day make my blood boil. So over 7 years ago, my father unfortunately passed away from cancer. We knew it was coming because he was quite poorly beforehand. And they tried various treatments and stuff and surgery and that, and unfortunately because of his overall health and everything and his age, there wasn't much they could do. Now, about 18 months before he passed away, one of my colleagues unfortunately lost her mum. She'd also been quite ill, and I remember watching the situation on how they treated her and the response to her going through this difficult time, and it was encouraging. They did as much as they could do to help her, in case of whatever time off she needed, and she was off for a good few weeks. And when she came back, they were sort of eased her back into it. And I remember watching what was happening, and because we already knew at this point that unfortunately my dad wasn't going to survive a huge amount of time. We knew it'd be like 1, maybe 2 years max. And I remember watching that and thinking, right, at least I know how things will be in work when he passes. That they will be supportive, they will help. Whatever, however I need to deal with things, because people deal with grief differently, that they'll have my back. So unfortunately, I was off had a week's holiday, and my dad had deteriorated quite quickly, and he never wanted to go into a hospital or a hospice. So we were determined, if humanly possible, that he would stay at home. We had care come in, and the end of life care sort of thing, to make him as comfortable as possible. So during that week when I was off, he passed away. We were all there. I was running around like an idiot, going back into to the pharmacist to get different things that doctors were prescribing. Walking out of the pharmacist absolutely terrified, literally carrying a bag containing heroin, which I had to sign for. Yes, you heard that right, because it had been prescribed for my dad because of end-of-life care. He needed strong painkillers, so it was all prescription stuff, and I had to sign for it and everything. And I'm literally walking out of the pharmacy thinking, I am carrying class A drugs here. I am terrified. And then hiding them in his room, and then nurses panicking because they couldn't find them, and me explaining because people were in and out of his room where I'd put it, so it was out of sight, and they're like, yes, that's fine. Me apologising for not telling him in advance where it was. So he passed away while I was off, so I contacted work and let them know. And because of the time of year, so it was not long before Easter, so it meant there would be a delay on the funeral. We wouldn't be able to have the funeral as soon as we would normally, so it was actually going to have to be a week's delay. And I didn't really want to be at home during that week. I'd rather have something to occupy myself. So I went and spoke to them at work and explained that, his funeral wouldn't be to the following week, and so I'd be in work the next week. I said, but I would need the following week off because it was going to be a difficult week. It was finalising the funeral. Well, I explained to him his funeral would be the following week. And the first word out the manager I spoke to his mouth was, oh, so will you need the whole day off then? So that knocked me to start off with. It's like, excuse me? Day of my dad's funeral, and you're just wanting to know if I want the whole day? I wouldn't want the whole day off. Why is that even the question? It's a case of, you were misunderstanding, thinking I was only, wasn't wanting the whole week off. Fair enough, but to assume that I would work part of the day and then go to the funeral, or go to the funeral and then come back to work, was incredibly insensitive. So I just looked and says, no, because of everything we need going to go through that week and need to do, says I need the week off. And I basically got, well, we don't know if we'll be able to give you that week off. So I just simply said, I'm taking the week off. So whether I get paid or not is a different matter. Says, but I won't be in that week. So it was like, all right, okay, we'll sort it. So this was before I came back to work the next day. So I'd be in work for a week and then I'd be off the following week, dealing with finalising the funeral and everything else. And the first day in work, so after he passed but before the funeral, I'm a little bit unhappy in that, it was a traumatic experience, and I'm grieving. My dad had just passed away. So another manager comes up to me, and he knows what had been going on. He was kept fully aware. In fact, he was the one I informed when he passed, to let the rest of the management team know that this had happened. And he never once asked me how I was feeling, was I going to be okay, was there anything they could do to help. He started going on about a customer that had been causing problems, and that they needed to contact and basically tell him that he couldn't have his own way. And the way he was talking, as if he was leading up to me phoning him. So I was listening to him in absolute shock and disbelief that literally I'd walked in the door 5 minutes before, a couple of days after losing my dad, and this was what was the first thing out of his mouth. And I got to the point where, in my mind, I'd got to the point where if he'd said he needed me to phone him, I was going to punch him. Not a case of I threatened to punch him. I was that angry, I was going to punch him. And it must have registered on my face that maybe he needs to take a step back, because he suddenly then started to backtrack about everything. So it was like, well, why are you telling me all this? He says, oh, just in case he phones up and you need to know about it. And so I just walked away. And I couldn't believe he never even asked how I was, if there was anything they could do to help. when 12 months before they'd been all over another colleague, being as supportive as humanly possible. So that showed me that we weren't all treated equally. That some people were favourites. And that for me killed a lot of respect I had for them, these particular managers. Let's see where we're at. So we've done about 3,000 and it was what? So it took about 12 minutes. We've been about 25 minutes. It's really fun on this one, isn't it? This conversation, really fun. So gonna keep going for a bit longer because we're only 16k out, and I was hoping to do about 15k per episode, but that doesn't look likely. So anyway, yes. So the same manager who I nearly punched, I was talking to him a few weeks later, and we were talking about how grief affects different people, and I mentioned how I was still getting dreams about my dad, because for the first couple of months, most of my dreams about my dad, I was so angry with him. I was so angry. I was screaming at him because his cancer was avoidable. He had smoked non-stop since he was 14. He'd lost a leg due to smoking. He was warned that this was a very good chance. The cancer he got is massively linked to smoking. It wasn't lung cancer, though it did eventually spread to his lungs, and that. But it was sort of smoking is sort of one of the biggest causes of this particular cancer, and so of course, I was grieving him, but I was angry as well that he'd been so stubborn that he refused to stop smoking, and it cost him his life, and that. So I mentioned to this manager that I was still getting these sort of dreams, and then he just looked at me and says, "Oh, I'm surprised you're still getting them." I was like, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, it's been 18 months, hasn't it?" And I just looked at him disbelief and says, "It's been 4 freaking weeks." He was like, "Oh right," and then left. I was thinking, it's been a month. Seriously, I don't expect you to be all over my life and everything else, but to be so oblivious to somebody who's still grieving, and just not give a damn, it's because of, to the extent that you can come up with a comment like that, made me so angry. And there was, well, I got on okay with him. It's just I accepted that's just who he is, and that and he, to some degree, he was quite a selfish person who wasn't great with empathy if you weren't in his immediate friend bubble. And I got on quite well, and even afterwards we still had a few laughs. But these events always, I do though apologise. We've just lost connection to the server, so I think the server had enough listening to me as well. So anyway, apologise, people. Looks like that's the end of episode 13. Hopefully I'll be back for episode 14. I'm probably going to leave that now for a day or two, because after this episode, I don't think anybody will come back. Alright, see you later, guys.